Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to embark on a really fascinating deep dive into the science of emotional regulation. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by a situation and wondered if you're just hardwired to be at the total mercy of your feelings, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to unpack exactly how our minds process feelings, and much more importantly, how we can take the steering wheel. Get ready because what we're covering today is incredibly empowering. To start us off, I want you to picture a scenario that I think a lot of us can definitely relate to. Imagine you and a friend need to absolutely ace Friday's exam to avoid having to take summer classes. You both spend an entire week studying your hearts out, and walking out of the classroom, you both feel incredibly confident. But then, you get your grades back. They're way, way lower than expected. Your immediate reaction is utter devastation. Your whole summer literally feels ruined. But your study buddy? They don't seem bothered at all. They just brush it off easily. Sitting there, you can't help but wonder, why the heck can't I just shake this off like they can? Which naturally brings us to the ultimate question. Is controlling our emotions even possible in the first place? When we're caught in a massive wave of stress or disappointment, it feels like our emotions are just happening to us, completely out of our control. But science actually tells us a very different story. The answer to this big question is a definitive, resounding yes. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The emotional control question. 2. The 4-step process model. 3. Handling the X scenario. 4. Managing your emotional response. 5. The constant happiness trap. And 6. Finding your emotional balance. Section 1. The emotional control question. Why do we react differently? Moving right along to Section 2. The 4-step process model. Your psychological toolkit. So, psychologists use this super cool framework, and there are 4 distinct phases to it. Let's walk through them. Step 1 is the situation. This could be a totally real event, or honestly, just an imagined one. Step 2 is attention. The situation basically hijacks your focus. Step 3 is appraisal. This is where your brain instantly evaluates the situation and judges whether it helps or hinders your personal goals. And finally, Step 4, the response. This leads to changes in how you feel, think, and behave. The absolute magic here, every single one of these steps offers an opportunity for you to consciously intervene. Section 3, handling the X scenario. The process model in action. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it applies to real life. Imagine you've been invited to a party, but plot twist, your absolute least favorite ex is gonna be there. How do we use the process model? Well, your first strategy intervenes at step 1, the situation. You can just avoid it entirely by skipping the party. But, say you really want to go, you can modify the situation, like making a conscious choice not to interact with them. If that's too difficult, shift your attention. Maybe you start a highly engaging game with your friends. And finally, you can reevaluate your thoughts. After reappraising things, you might suddenly realize, actually, you don't care who your ex dates anymore. You've completely changed the appraisal, which changes your emotional response. All right, Section 4, managing your emotional response. Tempering feelings after the fact. Okay, but what if you're totally caught off guard and the negative emotion just hits your full force? Managing an emotion after it has already bloomed is definitely tricky. People often fall back on unhelpful coping mechanisms, right? Hiding their emotions entirely or using recreational drugs, which honestly just snowballs into more negative feelings. Instead, sustainable strategies are where it's at. They take a little more effort, for sure, but they are highly effective. We're talking going for a long walk to physically process the energy, taking some deep breaths, or just talking the whole situation through with a good friend. And here is a really empowering takeaway for you. Internalizing control makes regulation so much easier. Look, using these strategies definitely takes practice, but simply learning to pause, notice your emotions, and reflect on where they're actually coming from, that is literally half the battle. Once you truly believe that you have the power to regulate your emotions, doing it becomes substantially easier. Which brings us to Section 5, the constant happiness trap. Should we always be upbeat? So the crucial point is, now that we have these amazing tools, should we just regulate away every single negative feeling and force a good mood 100% of the time? This requires a massive paradigm shift. It is so tempting to think we should always avoid sadness. But emotions are neither inherently good nor bad. Actually, scratch that. A better way to look at it is they are either helpful or unhelpful, depending entirely on the context of the situation. For instance, forcing happiness isn't always the goal. Imagine a friend is telling you about the loss of a loved one. In that specific scenario, feeling and expressing sadness is incredibly helpful. It allows you to empathize and connect with them. Forcing a massive smile there, completely unhelpful. On the flip side, forcing a polite smile to get through a minor annoyance at the grocery store, yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. Context is literally everything. If you fall into the trap of thinking you absolutely must always be happy, you're going to run into real problems. Studies actually show that people who obsessively fixate on happiness end up experiencing these wild secondary negative emotions. I'm talking feeling immense guilt because you aren't happy, frustration over the fact that you're upset, and just massive disappointment that you don't feel better. It's a total toxic cycle of positivity. Moving to our final part, Section 6, finding your emotional balance, accepting and moving forward. You know, we get so many mixed messages from society, don't we? Some people say stay completely positive no matter what, while others tell you to just let your emotions run wild. In reality, everyone's got to find their own unique balance. You don't have to let anger or sadness completely dictate your life. By using reappraisal, you can absolutely accept reality. You can say, okay, I accept that I feel sad right now, while simultaneously cultivating the hope that things will get better. You aren't blindly suppressing the emotion, but you certainly aren't drowning in it either. So what does this all mean for us? I want to leave you with this final, lingering question as we wrap up our explainer today. How will you revalue your next tough situation? The next time you face a major disappointment, I really want you to remember the process model. You have the total power to shift your attention, appraise the situation differently, or simply choose a highly sustainable way to process the feeling. You genuinely have the tools to master your mind. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope you put these strategies to work for you.